I have watched more anime than I would like to admit, and I've also read a disgusting number of mangas throughout my life. There were a few mangas and shows that captured my attention through their art style long before I even started drawing. And now that I've actually started drawing, I thought, let's go back to my inspirations to some of these mangas and study what makes their art so good in the first place. But in this video in particular, I wanted to look at three major mangas that sort of inspired me to draw. The three mangas that I'll be discussing in this video are, first off, it's Araki's Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Next up we have Junji Ito and his horror everything collection, but I'll especially be looking at Tomy, which is one of his most popular works, I think. And then third one is a bit of a wild card. It's Osama Ranking, or The Ranking of the Kings by Sosuke Toka, I think. Let me check. Yeah, it's Sosuke Toka, and that's a bit of a wild card, but I'll tell you like why I included it in this video. So let's get started, and just a quick disclaimer, I'm not a really good artist. I am just starting out, so I apologize in advance if like my drawings are not exactly what you would expect. But still, I hope there's some knowledge that I can deliver through my study of these artists, and hopefully there's something you can take away from my experimentation, I suppose. The first ever anime that I watched, which had a really unique art style, was Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. I mean, I came from this trope where protagonists, or just any character, you know, a bit of round looking character with no chin, it's just one pointed this thing for chin, and very minimal features. They would have really big eyes, but other than that, nothing. Just this for a nose and then a line for the mouth. That's all they had. And so when I watched Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood, I was like, blood, what is this? It was just buff dudes with comically proportional torsos, compared to their heads, just playing rugby, fighting, doing poses, whatnot, and it was the best thing. Like, holy shit, this is amazing. I went and I read the manga, and holy shit, what a manga it was. It was amazing, right? But I've noticed that throughout the manga as well, there is variations across Araki's drawing styles. So he starts off more of like this sort of dreamy, surreal, old anime aesthetic, something that you see in Cowboy Bebop, but also in like Feast of North Star. Let me show it to you here. Like, if you can see here, I have here a picture of Erina and Speedwagon from one of the panels, and you can sort of see what I mean. Like, you can see it has the Jojo traits, but it's also not like the Jojo of today, which is doing collaboration with fashion brands and whatnot. Araki started combining it with other pop culture references. He started adding really experimental costume designs, which I love, by the way, and the characters just popped so much. Like, I think in part 4, Josuke is probably the most boring looking character, and I hate to say it. Compared to even Jotaro was outshining him at times, and I think that's also why so many people just do not like part 4, is because the side characters sort of outshine the main protagonist. I think Kishibe Rohan is like one of the best designs in part 4, and that is sort of the step that I think Araki took after that, where he started making every character really unique and really making the character design and costume sort of pop out. And you can see this in part 5, where every character is a fashion model. Combine that with his pop cultural references, it's just one of the best mangas ever written, in my opinion. Also, he started sort of developing more of a realism from these buff dudes to more realistic characters. Like, even Jotaro changes a lot from Volume 3 Stardust Crusaders to Stone Ocean. He looks more normal, and yeah, this lineup of people from part 5 pretty much sums up what I mean. Like, this is like peak Jojo's design right here, with lots of variations across his art style. There were a few things that I could see, a few patterns, which distinctly made an art like Jojo-ish. There were a few things that I noticed, and the first thing that really stood out, Araki draws fuller lips compared to all other anime. It's never just a line and maybe a small line at the bottom for lips. It's always full lips, especially upper lips. And when we look at characters from different angles, those lips sort of, you know, he has to create that three-dimensionality, so he sort of shades those lips at times, and it just looks more realistic. It looks less like an anime and more like a character design, something you'd see in a video game. So I did some lip studies of my own, inspired by Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Most of them have like really full lips. He doesn't also just draw the bottom lip completely, he just sort of shows that the structure is there. For Giorno Giovanna as well as for our boy here, both of them, they are like, you can see the structure of the lips at least. And the second thing that I've noticed is like Araki has a really beautiful way of drawing eyes. What I mean by that is he does have that sort of anime aesthetic to eyes where they are big and the iris is small, and then you have like a reflective surface that, you know, that typical anime eye stuff. But he does so proportionally, like they're not like comically large. And I did some eye study right here. They do have the characteristics of a anime eye, but they're also really proportional when it comes to face symmetry. They're not like this big eyes with this small nose. No. The nose is right where it needs to be and the eye is right where it needs to be. The third point, and I think this one is the most underrated aspect of Jojo's art style, is there are lines everywhere on the face, man. And I think this comes like when I studied his eyes and his lips, Araki knew the planes of the head very, very well. If you go to a model of Asaro head and if you look at all the planes, Araki knew what he was doing while creating Jojo characters. Because of these edges of the planes of the head, we can sort of see certain lines. For example, this line here where this plane and this plane sort of meet together, this line, the line in the cheekbones, these lines, he's not scared to draw them. Lines, for example, down here at the eyes, here lines, sometimes even here for when you have like a thicker jawbone. What I did is I took this inspiration of Erina and I wanted to sort of draw it using everything that I've learned, but in my style, and just add like these three elements that I learned. So in the original you can see she has a bigger chin. She's also a bit more dreamy and stuff. It's a really beautiful art, and this sort of gives me a typical Jojo look, right? I also was studying like proper character design and like how he does his shading and hatching, and this is very much in line with what I learned about the planes of the head using the Asaro method. Like there's a plane here, a here, and again here you can see he draws fuller lips and he has a really interesting way of drawing eyes. And when you combine this with really dynamic poses, this is what makes Jojo the manga it is today. Just a beautiful piece of work. Now, before I fanboy over Jojo's too much, let's move on. And a bit of a trigger warning for this next artist, because he is a horror artist. So yeah, if you're triggered by horror stuff, uncanny stuff, I don't know, severed heads, close-up of eyes, I don't know, all sorts of horror stuff, please feel free to skip forward. So the next artist that I wanted to talk about is Junji Ito, and especially his works in Tomi, right? I was especially drawn to the simplicity of his art style. Like there's not much shading when you just read the story. There's like very simple characters with simple lines. Everything that I complained about earlier about anime having simple lines, simple eyes, that is prevalent in Junji Ito's manga, right? Let's take a panel from Tomi, and you can see that compared to Jojo's, the characters are really simple. And what I've noticed is if Ito wants to show that a character is beautiful, if they're posh, he has this weird expression that he draws, like this one right here. If you see this expression in any character, it means that this character is pretty, is beautiful. He also has a really beautiful way of drawing hair. As you can see again with Tomi, she's supposed to be really pretty, so she has that smug expression on her mouth, and she has really pretty hair, and she also carries herself with mannerisms, poses that a posh girl has compared to, I don't know, a Rugrat or whatever. They are completely different. She acts very posh, she does not show many emotions on her face, but again, it's really simple, but then there's this juxtaposition, and how this simplicity actually works in his favor is every time he has to deliver that punch of horror, and he just cranks it up by 100%. What comes next is like the most detailed shit you have ever seen. It's this girl right here. To show that she's horrified, Ito draws this, which is just the most detailed look at an eye. Like, this is the most horrifying thing ever. He draws everything from the eyelids, the eyelashes, even the veins and nerves inside the eyes, and the shading. And then I also found out that he likes to throw in these weird scribble lines everywhere just to sort of amp up that anxiety. That is how sort of Ito's art style works. You have very simplistic panels that build up, and then boom, there comes the detailed punch of horror. One of the most horrifying panels, this is not from Tomy, but it's from like one of his short stories, but this is a severed head, which is severed by the hair. I think it's called The Long Hair in the Attic or something, the story. It is so much detailed when it comes to hatching, cross-hatching, and just weird random mumbo-jumbo all over the face. And I sort of did some studies of Araki as well. Like, face it's pretty normal. There's nothing, the features don't really jump out. There are not clean edges like Jojo's. But what I've noticed is Ito does not like to use grays in his drawings. It's either black or white. There's this yin and yang. Here her eyes are drawn in a way that he draws, with pupils completely black, and below here is like a more closed in detailed version of the eye, which he really likes to do. And here I did a study. It's not the best because I just forgot to draw the ear here. But other than that, you can sort of see how he uses just two values. Again, this background is supposed to be a bit more darker, and I've noticed that his hatching sort of follows the contour of the face. So it's more round, so it goes like this. It's not just a random hatching. There's like lines going across the face, across the planes of the head, right here. Just a beautiful piece of drawing, and it's really horrifying. But yeah, that's it. If I had to sum up his art style, like patterns, I said there's a really peculiar way of drawing the eyes where they become really small and you can sort of see the details in the irises, the nerves and stuff. And he also uses very harsh lighting. The way I compare his usage of shading is like he uses lighting when it's like the cliche horror storytelling trope in a story where somebody puts flashlight below and goes like, once upon a time, blah blah blah. That's sort of how he uses the lighting. Another one of his most iconic characters, the shading, is just the same way, as if the light is below. And so finally, the last manga that I wanted to talk about, that I immediately got hooked because of the art style, is The Ranking of the Kings. And compared to these technical giants, Ranking of the Kings is actually a pretty wholesome manga. And it's also really uniquely drawn. Here I have a few panels from the anime. And the characters are, you would expect, like this is the art style, right? Some snobs would say, oh, this is really bad art, blah blah blah. This is the thing, this reminds me of good old times when I was a kid, when I was learning to draw. This art, The Ranking of Kings, it sort of reminds me of how I used to draw as a kid, but with a more mature storyline. It is simplicity at its best. And it also reminded me of when I started to draw and I picked up this book called Fun with a Pencil by Andrew Loomis. He talks about the first thing about drawing is having fun, and the second thing is delivering a message. That's two things that I think this art style does. And it reminded me of when I drew characters while studying Fun with a Pencil. Let me just see. And I drew really goofy characters. These are just, you know, it's just having fun. Like these characters, for example, a bunch of fun characters. There was also this section about how emotions play and how your eyebrows and your eyes and your mouth sort of convey your emotion. The peak example of this is the art style in Ranking of the Kings. Like, you look at these characters, these are really simple characters, but if I was to draw them again, I would not be able to bring out the personality within these characters, even if I tried. Like here's my version of those drawings, and I just cannot seem to bring out those personalities. This is how you draw Prince. This is like the most easiest protagonist to draw, probably. It's just a circle with a V for a mouth and then a little crown at the side to show that he's a prince, right? There's two things that I learned from this art style. The first one is the shapes for the hair. He uses really solid shapes for hair. Me, whenever I draw hair, I'm like stuck with this realism, blah 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 bullshit, and so I just always draw individual strands of hair, blah blah blah. I never draw the shape. I need to show the three-dimensionality of the hair, which I never do. He uses really simple shapes to describe the hair. For example, for this guy, even the hat, it's like really simple shapes. This hair in particular stood out to me the most. This one with the beard and the hair, really simple shapes. Even here, the prince's hair as well. And that's something that I want to take away, like to first draw the shape of the hair and then to add, like, I don't know, realism, whatever to it. Second up is the usage of emotions. And this panel that I took here, you can see exactly how he does it. Like these expressions exactly show like what the prince is trying to do. He's a bit anxious here he's determined, here he's learning, here he's sad, here he's angry. You can just see that expression coming out. And I did a bit of expression study myself for this anime, and I know the mangaka, he has studied these characters a lot, like the character design, the costumes, the crowns, the weaponry, everything else is like very much fits the theme. So it's a manga that is filled with personality that shines through this simplistic drawing. And there you have it. That was a lot of me yapping, but hopefully you learned something from all of my case studies. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot myself. I have picked up on a few techniques that I will implement into my drawings moving forward. These are not just the only mangas with the best art style. There are a lot of them, and hopefully maybe I'll do like a part 2 of other mangas that I consider have really beautiful art style. Hopefully you have something to take away from this video. Feel free to roast my art style. If you want to see more of these kinds of videos, do let me know. Thank you for sticking to the end, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.